too good. So let's take a look at focusing on infants for a minute and nutritional requirements. I think I'm okay. I actually wanted to start here. I need to get these out of order. Essentially, you mentioned your daughter and breastfeeding and all of that, and definitely professionals in the field will suggest that breastfeeding is really the best source of nutrition. It doesn't mean that if you opt to formula feed, infant milk feed, that that's somehow going to be of detriment to your child. It is just the best source. It's cheapest. There's certain aspects of it that make sense for many families, but it's not for everybody. Up to 4 months, all nutritional requirements are received this way, so there's no need for any other, food source. Okay, this is the food source. Okay, so again, it's just a matter of whether you're opting for breast milk or formula milk. Usually around 4 months is when pediatricians recommend that you begin with some solid foods in a pureed form. Okay, which changes the texture now. And I'm remembering they have definitely that, there's the cereal, that's a rice cereal, so it's rather soft, and it's from flakes. Pureed fruits and vegetables. You can then introduce pureed meats and beans as well. And as far as breastfeeding, what's being recommended now by pediatricians is usually around 6 months. They're recommending that you're trying to introduce a cup to the child, using a cup, with the lid and being able to hold that. So I know there's been a little bit of controversy around that as far as the length of time to breastfeed. And there's still people that breastfeed beyond that. In fact, I think there was even some studies, it seems like within the last 10 years, that had to do with breastfeeding and cognitive functioning, and the longer you were breastfed. And so, of course, I like that because we were all breastfed. So I kind of ran with that. But that is really not the case. They're finding that at 6 months is fine as far as getting the nutrients, and after that point, you can introduce solid foods. Okay. So again, you want to start right around 4 months. And oftentimes it's recommended, I didn't put it up here, but when you're introducing, thinking about fruits and vegetables, I know it's been recommended to mothers to introduce vegetables first. Because oftentimes introducing fruits and then vegetables later, they really don't want the vegetables because the fruits are so much better tasting. So I've heard parenting education courses where they recommend doing it in that order. I know that I don't think I necessarily did it in that order, but that's what they're opting for. Okay. And you want the infant to gradually learn to chew. So again, the texture is kind of changing over time as they get older, from a pureed form to a mashed, and then chopping up small little bits of meat. And eggs are okay at 6 months. And we don't want to add any artificial sweeteners or sugars. Really just use what nature gave us as far as sweetening. Okay, just using naturally sweet fruits. Because there's no real nutritional value here, and so it's not something that we need to. We know it's something that they'll like, and they'll like the taste of. And in fact, definitely as adults we like it, and that's what we often opt for, but we really need to reduce that even as adults, so we can hold off on that. As far as fluid requirements for an infant, under 6 months, and this is American Academy of Pediatrics, it's about 2.5 fluid ounces, and they go by body weight. Okay, so if you figure how much an 8-pound baby is, that's about 20 ounces. And then as they start weighing more, it drops to 2 fluid ounces for fluid requirements. Okay. And this is also American Academy of Pediatrics. As far as calories, they go by per inch of height, okay, as far as what would be the daily intake. Okay, 40 calories per inch of height. So you have to consider, you know, if it's a toddler, if it's a 5-year-old. And so this is just a rough guideline of what that would be. And this is a change from earlier, the earlier nutritional guideline where they talked about servings. I don't know if you remember that. 3 servings, 4 servings. So people were confused because they didn't know what a serving was. What's the equivalent? So then they changed it with the food pyramid and they tried to make it more precise. So, you know, 5 ounces of grains, usually 1 ounce is like a piece of toast. Vegetables and fruits, about 3 cups. You know, so actually that's about 2 pieces of fruit. Dairy, 2 cups. Meat and beans, 4 ounces. And, you know, nuts are a very good source when it comes to protein, and fall in there, and beans as well, but nuts should not be given to children under 5. Okay, again, because of the choking aspect with nuts, so that's something to definitely parents need to be mindful of. Okay, so then it goes up slightly, okay, 4 to 8 years. Now we have 4 to 5 ounces, and we have 1.5 cups for fruits and vegetables, and milk about 2 cups. And for meats, beans, and fish, 3 to 4 ounces, so you know, if you get a piece of meat. And what they really recommend through all of this is that you want a variety. And if you take any nutrition or even physiology class, that's one of the things they really emphasize is a variety of foods for these nutritional requirements, not just the same food source all the time. So trying to mix it up a bit. And so making sure if there's certain types of meat that they're not getting, again, as we mentioned with the anemia concern, you know, what are you opting instead? What are you putting in? Are they getting more than in the vegetables? Are they getting more of something to compensate? 'Cause now we have more people that are, you know, vegans, you know, vegetarians, and, you know, are limiting, you know, certain foods for their children, and they need to consider and make sure that's a responsibility that they're getting it. Okay. So every child has unique dietary needs and preferences, and what they mean by that is really depending upon the level of activity, their metabolism, and that's something when you go to My Pyramid, you know, it'll give you an idea of what's meant by that, and that's also for adults as well, okay, because we vary as far as activity level and how that would affect our caloric needs. And certain types of food are more appropriate at certain ages. Okay, so as we mentioned, you know, nuts, although being a good source of protein and are very high in fat, you wouldn't want to give that to a child, a very young child, because they could potentially choke on that. Okay, so these are some basic guidelines for children. Small serving sizes. You know, oftentimes parents will introduce a new food, the child doesn't like it, so they don't like that food. You need to just continue to try to reintroduce that food. Just do it at a different time. Sometimes serving it with a familiar food. Okay. Never forcing the child to eat anything. Okay, and I know I've seen parents that really want to make sure that they eat it, and it's more of a battle than anything, doesn't go anywhere. Toddlers tend to prefer raw to cooked vegetables. Okay, because they like the taste of it better. So, and that's fine. Fruits are typically preferred to vegetables. And again, what did we say about that? So if you're fighting and fighting to get them to eat the vegetables, don't get so hung up on it. Just make sure that they're doubling up then in the fruits, so they're getting what they need to. Okay, and that's what pediatricians are recommending. And keep reintroducing the vegetables though. Okay? Bringing in that broccoli and spinach. And then also snacks are important throughout the day, and I think you all know that you want to think again of the food groups and nutritious snacks. Okay, not the Hostess and the chips and the salt and all of that. Okay. Okay. Some other things to mention that we want parents to know is, again, if you're getting concerned, and I know my sister is very much this way, that she has a 2-year-old, and he eats like a bird some days, and then other days he makes up for it. Apparently that's very normal. Okay? That you'll have days where they're really not eating necessarily, from all the groups as they should, and getting all the nutritional requirements for that particular day. That's very common. Again, don't, get so, concerned about it, that typically they will actually make it up, okay, over weeks and days. Limiting snacks close to meal times, because again, when you're going to be serving your grains and going to be serving a meal, you want them to get as much of that as they can. And so if you're giving them a snack, even if it's 45 minutes before, if you're giving them a bowl of ice cream, or giving them some other snack, especially with sugar, if it's going to be a juice or something like that, then that could also interfere with them eating as much. And as we mentioned, involving them with the preparation of the food, and if they're old enough to do this, if you feel you're able to do that, but you can definitely start talking about it. And overall, just encouraging good eating habits, and the first and foremost way we do that is by modeling. So, it's very easy to tell kids that we want them to drink their milk and not eat so much sugar, but if we're sitting there and we're pounding down donuts and all of that, it's going to happen. Any questions about this? This was just kind of focusing in on some things. You had mentioned the fatty acids, right? The fat. And I didn't get into detail about that, but definitely we need fat in our diet, even as adults. We need cholesterol in our diets. We need salt in our diets. There's these things that we need that people, I think, have had this negative connotation about, but we need it in limited amounts. And for the most part, Americans, we have too much salt. We have too much protein. We eat a lot of red meat. It's excess. And fats, that's the highest. It's high in fat. So that is why you hear all this in the news about, hey, you got to cut this back and cut this back. So just know that we do need it in our diet, but we need to be careful. Our choice of fatty foods that we choose, definitely, there's 3 types. There's one that's a saturated fat, which is the one we want to limit. And just kind of in a nutshell, that's the one related to hypertension and heart disease. So again, if that's the one we're opting to have most of the time, that's correlated with heart disease, and that's what kills most people in this country. And that's found in most meat products, with the exception of fish. And fish is the only one that doesn't have a saturated. Fish has very good oils, actually, for it, and good fats. So if you like fish, that's great. See, I don't eat too much fish, but yeah, that's why they recommend you do eat fish.